Okay, so balance. What do I mean by balance? Well, a balanced book cover is it's satisfying for your brain. So when your brain looks at a book cover that's balanced, you're like, oh, okay, this looks good. This looks right. But when it's unbalanced, you can't even tell consciously, but subconsciously, your brain knows there's something wrong with the design. There's something wrong with the cover. So it's super important to have a balanced design. Now, in order to see if you have a balanced design, you can separate your book cover in half and then see if you have the same amount of weight on each side of your book cover. What do I mean by weight? If you draw shapes around the elements of your book cover, they're going to take up a bunch of space on your cover. You want there to be the same amount of elements or the same amount of things taking up space in both sides of your cover. What do I mean by this? I'm going to show you right now. So let's say we slice this book cover in half. This is just roughly. It doesn't have to be exactly the exact same weight, but it has to be roughly in order to be satisfying. If we can slice it in half, this is basically half a heart right here, and then you have the other half as well. So this is your half a heart, cut it in half. The other half is the same on the other half of the cover. Now let's look at this scholastic one. I think I might not even be exactly in the middle. Let me just do that again. There we go. So let's say that's the middle of the cover. You can see this is half the heart here, and the other half is exactly the same. Then you have this square here, which is exactly the same over here. Now in the book cover, you have to have the illustrator and the writer. So what do? They added the writer here. They take up this thing here, and then the same thing on the other part of the cover. So you can see right now it's all balanced. This is the same, this is the same, and the half a heart is the same. Now let's look at the main characters. The main character, I can circle them, is down here. So in order to create a balanced cover, they need to take up the same amount of space absolutely anywhere they want on this cover. Not absolutely anywhere, but in a balanced way. They could have had this character here. If they had this character here, that would have been extremely balanced, but the top might have looked a little bit empty. So instead of putting the character here, they put the character up here. But again, this book cover is balanced. But for now, they use the same elements that take up the same amount of space, and they used it in a balanced way. So because this guy's on the bottom of the, or in the middle of the heart, this mouse can be at the top of the heart, so it balances. Let's look at another cover. So how does this cover have balance? If we cut this in the middle, first of all, we can see that there's balance here because you have half the bowl here and you have the other half over here. So that's balance. Same applies for this bowl. This bowl is half over here and then half over here. Now let's look at the book title. This takes up this amount of space, and again on the other side it takes up this amount of space. Now you might say, oh, but this thing here, this symbol is on the right, but there's not one on the left. Yes, but there is the subtitle on the left over here. And can you see, just like the heart one, where they're opposite each other, but one is higher, one is lower? That's the same thing here. One is higher and one is lower. Now the final thing is, not the final thing, second to final thing is the author name. You can see it takes up the same amount of space on the left and on the right. And then finally, this thing here in the background. And you see this thing here in the background. This takes up a lot of space, and it also is in the foreground, so it attracts your attention. So what do? They added another background element on the top side. So because this is on the bottom left side of the book cover, they added the same element or the same background element on the top right page. So that creates balance. This is balanced, that's balanced. And if you cut it in the middle, the bowls are balanced. Everything is balanced. It's a very nice balanced cover. Same thing with this one. Split it in half. The first thing that stands out is you have thing 1 on the left and you have thing 2 on the right. Look at these hearts. There's one heart here, one heart here. We're going to count the other hearts as part of the main image. But these two hearts, you have one on the left, one on the right. Lovely is on the left, takes up this amount of space. Things is on the right, takes up this amount of space. Dr. Zeus is in the middle, takes up the same amount of space. I might have not put this super accurately, but you can see roughly what I'm talking about. And then there's one heart over here on the left, and directly opposite, another heart on the right. So this is a balanced cover. Let's look at one final cover. So the complete cookbook for young chefs. This is a very balanced cover. Even though it doesn't seem like it, I'm going to show you why. Okay, so let's slice this in half. I think that's half, but we're just going to go roughly. So first of all, let's go from bottom to the top. We can see that there's one thing here, one bowl of things to put in the fajita. I don't know. One here on the left, one here on the right, and then one directly in the middle getting split. So that's even. You can see right here, this is even. Now, another thing we can see is they have this big subtitle. Because they have this big subtitle on the left, they need to have something on the right to balance, which is why they have the badge on the right. So you can see they have this element here, so they on the right side, so they put another element here on the left side. Now, if you look at the text, this part here is balanced. You see, if I draw a square or a rectangle around it, this is balanced. This takes the same amount of space as this does. But here's where it gets tricky. This part here, the title isn't very balanced. This one takes a lot of space, but on the left side, there's not so much space, which is why they added these lemons. So now, if we draw this with the lemons, they take the same amount of space. So the lemons and the title work together to take up that same amount of space on the left and on the right. Now, the final thing is this thing here. We're going to put the badge and the word the together. If we put them together, then we can see that the fajita or the taco or whatever it is balances the cover out. So they added this here to balance out this. this. Now, when you get really good at design, you don't have to be exactly balanced. You can play around with it, which is why you can see this one a little bit over here. There's this little thing here, and maybe this isn't 100% balanced, but the more experienced you are, the more you can play around with it and still make it look good. This is one of the best selling books on Amazon, and it looks amazing. It's such a good cover for all the reasons that we talk about in the book cover module. They have every single thing that I talk about. So yeah, that's how you create a balanced book cover. Just try and have the same amount of elements, or at least get as close as possible to having the same amount of elements, take up the same amount of space both on the left side of your cover and on the right side of your cover. This is going to help you create very balanced book cover. So I hope this was helpful.